Welcome back to The Explainer. So if you've been keeping an eye on the financial markets lately, you've probably noticed something huge. The wall between traditional finance and crypto, it's literally crumbling down. Today, we're diving into a massive rollout from Kraken that is fundamentally shifting the landscape across both of these sectors. We're going to unpack the data, the strategy, and what this actually means for the market.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to look at Kraken's big move, 2 ways to trade, decoding xStocks, the financial strategy, and finally, the bigger picture.
All right, part 1, Kraken's big move. Let's see what's happening here. So, as of August 18th, if you're an eligible customer across any of the 30 European Economic Area countries, and yeah, that includes all EU member states, plus Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway, you can now trade over 7,000 US-listed stocks directly on Kraken. 7,000! This is a full-scale rollout, and it significantly expands what their platform can do, pushing way beyond just standard cryptocurrency trading.
Moving right along to part 2, 2 ways to trade.
Now, how exactly are they setting themselves apart? Well, it comes down to what Kraken calls the Kraken 1 concept. Look at the current landscape. It's super fragmented, right? You've got competitors like Bitpanda sticking to traditional stocks, while platforms like Robinhood or Crypto.com are really leaning into tokenized products. But Kraken, they're offering both of these formats side by side, inside a single, regulated account. So you get access to those 7,000 plus traditional US stocks, right? Alongside over 700 tokenized assets, which they're calling xStocks.
To really grasp why this dual format is such a big deal for the everyday user, just listen to what Kraken's Chief Commercial Officer Mark Greenberg had to say. He pointed out that customers can choose how they access the same underlying exposure without moving capital or changing platforms. It's all about killing the friction. Instead of having to wire money back and forth between your traditional stockbroker and your crypto exchange, you can just execute trades commission-free right through Kraken Pro and their main app. Though as smart investors, we always have to remember to check the fine print for spreads and FX costs, right?
Let's move to part 3 and see how this builds. Decoding xStocks.
Okay, so what exactly is an xStock anyway? Put simply, xStocks are blockchain-based tokens that represent actual shares in a company or an exchange-traded fund. The absolutely crucial part here is that they are backed one-to-one by the underlying security. Every single token perfectly mirrors a real-world share sitting securely in a vault. It's literally bridging traditional Wall Street equities with the tech infrastructure of the blockchain. And this tech unlocks an incredible triad of benefits for European investors. First up, fractional exposure. You don't need hundreds of dollars to buy a single share of some massive tech giant anymore. You can actually start building a position with literally just $1. Second, because these are on-chain tokens, trading runs 24/7. So when the traditional markets in New York ring the closing bell, xStocks just keep right on moving. And third, portability. You can actually take your xStocks and move them to a self-custody wallet. Now, I do want to mention a couple of caveats to keep things balanced. Standard xStocks generally don't give you the traditional voting rights you'd get from holding the actual stock, and dividends, those get automatically reinvested into the token instead of being paid out as cash. Also, for the advanced traders out there, Kraken does offer xStocks perpetual contracts, which allow up to 20x leverage on major assets like NVIDIA, Apple, and the SPY ETF.
That brings us to part 4, the financial strategy. Let's look at the business case and parent company Payword's Q2 2026 data.
Now, what's really interesting here is checking if this tokenized model is actually catching on. And wow, the data points to some rapid adoption. Since launching xStocks back in June of 2025, the product has already racked up a staggering $38 billion in transaction volume. To put that into perspective, they were reporting $25 billion just back in March. That growth curve is steep.
But when we zoom out and look at Payword's overall Q2 2026 numbers, there's this brilliant paradox that totally explains why they're making this strategic pivot right now. Get this, revenue is actually up 17% year over year, hitting $508 million. But their profitability, specifically adjusted EBITDA, tanked 70%. It dropped from $80 million down to just $23 million. Why? Because their total platform transaction volume fell 18% to $310 billion. Basically, spot crypto trading is down. And since crypto exchange operations have super high fixed overhead costs, that drop in trading volume puts a massive squeeze on their bottom line.
So, the crucial point is that this divergence perfectly clarifies why Kraken is expanding into traditional and tokenized stocks. Even though spot crypto trading volume dropped, the company explicitly pointed out that their equities and tokenized equities actually grew during that exact same quarter. They're making a huge strategic pivot away from relying totally on transaction-based crypto fees. In fact, asset-based and other revenues now make up 60% of their total revenue, which is up from 55%. They're basically earning more from holding assets and providing broader services. And this whole shift is being supported by a 42% growth in funded accounts, bringing their total up to 6.6 million.
All right, finally, part 5, the bigger picture. Let's zoom out and look at the macro trends.
Tokenized stocks are absolutely booming right now. If you look at the broader real-world asset, or RWA sector, tokenized stocks have carved out a 15% share. That is a massive jump from just 5% earlier this year. Kraken, along with platforms like Ondo and Binance, are really the primary drivers pushing this expanding market forward right now. They're capitalizing on a much wider shift in how real-world assets are being digitized. And they are deepening this entire ecosystem to expand the utility of these tokens even further. For instance, Kraken now lets users post selected xStocks as collateral for futures and margin positions. Oh, and remember earlier when I brought up that caveat about not having voting rights? Well, scratch that, actually. Kraken is starting to fix that. They recently extended shareholder voting rights to over 125,000 xStocks holders. Plus, they aren't stopping at the European Economic Area. They've already signaled plans for a massive global rollout of this combined equity service in the coming months. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly important question to think about. What does this blurring line between traditional finance and crypto mean for the future of your investing? Kraken's ultimate goal is clearly to be a one-stop shop, bringing crypto, traditional stocks, and tokenized assets together under one roof. As these walls keep falling, how is this kind of consolidated access going to change the way you manage your own wealth? It is an absolutely fascinating shift, and we will be right here to explain every single step of it as it unfolds. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I can't wait to dive into our next topic with you soon.